Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much indeed for choosing this workshop over the others this afternoon. My name's Robin Baines. I'm a farmer from Norfolk, England, and a council member. This afternoon, we will be hearing about innovation in the potato industry and some of the challenges that innovation will present us over the next decade or so. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first of our three speakers, Linda Eatherton, the Director of Ketchum Global Food and Nutrition, to kick off. She will speak for the larger majority of the time, followed by Angus Armstrong, Chief Executive of Greenville AP on my right, and Mark Linus, who made a name for himself this morning, author and environmentalist. Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Great. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone here at World Potato Congress for inviting me to be here. This is quite an honor. Today I'm going to share with you some insights into the mindset of consumers, both today and peering into the future. As we all know, innovation really starts in the mind of the consumer. And what we need to think about before we try to establish meeting their unmet needs is meeting those perceptions and expectations, because that really is how we reach the hearts and the minds of the consumer. In the last 5 years, we've seen a dramatic shift in power as we move from a very consumer-centric society to a consumer-driven society, where technology has literally armed and given the consumers the ability to unite, to influence, to inform, and frankly, to hold court in split second. Today, I'm going to share with you a little bit of research that we've done at Ketchum. We conducted this in 5 parts of the world: China, the US, the UK, Germany, and Argentina, to get some indication of what consumers would do or what they would want if they were actually named the CEO of a major food company. Ketchum, as some of you may know, is a global marketing firm, communications firm, operating across 70 countries in 102 offices, and noted for our specialization in food marketing. I will tell you that this piece of research is merely a 40,000-foot snapshot of the wealth of rich data that came out of this work. The research was meant to be directional and not definitive, and it helps us to understand that if our hunch was true, we actually could understand better how to market in the future. And our hunch was that consumers who are empowered by social media expect and believe that they deserve even more power and influence than they currently have, meaning that they will want even more power and influence in the future. The one headline I can share with you is that while we consistently see very wide and diverse variations in the way people buy and eat food around the world, the one truth that we saw coming out of this research was that we are all very, very similar. In fact, what it makes us similar worldwide is that we share very similar values when it comes to where our food comes from, how it's produced, and what it's designed to do. So this survey was done online with consumers in each country. 200 consumers were actually targeted. The research sampled in both 2008 and 2011 primary shoppers and middle-income shoppers. So in most countries, you're talking about women. What we did see is there's some strong and shifting priorities going on from 2008 to 11, and potentially part of that is because of a shifting economy worldwide. We all know that taste, quality, and price have always been absolutely key to the consumer shopping decision tree. What is changing and what is very interesting to us is that taste is beginning to drop on the list. And we don't believe that that is an indication that taste is not important. When we probed into this particular piece of data, we found that taste was expected. It was a table stake and not a variable for making a food choice. While certainly there are taste preferences, the expectation of quality taste is always there. What is rising and what is changing is the importance of quality. Again, when we probed into what does that word quality actually mean, it appears it's a code word for products that are good for me, good for my family, and good for my planet. While quality and price have risen in importance, so too has nutritional value and health benefits. And I would predict that it's only a matter of time before nutrition and/or health reach the top box of important considerations in shoppers' minds around the world. This can be a huge advantage for potatoes, one of the world's most nutrient-dense vegetables, in the years ahead. Potatoes' healthy halo will create a critical and important leverage point as food service and retail operations address worldwide demands for better foods that are better for you. And around the world, what we see is branded foods are bouncing back. They took a hit during poor economic times in various parts of the world because private label or store brand took over, but brands are coming back as a symbol of products that hold both value and values. This is the new brand expectation, an expectation even in the produce section, where branded produce can actually deliver on a very high promise that it is worth a higher price. And brands matter to consumers. They see them as symbolic, as icons of trust. When you see that 65% of consumers around the world expect a brand to deliver a certain amount of trust, you know it's their guarantee, it's their shorthand for making a very important shopping decision. One of the other things that we saw in this research, which frankly is quite surprising, is that consumers are beginning to believe that food companies and the food industry needs to behave more like an NGO, which frankly I find very interesting. I've been in the food industry for 35 years and I've never seen anything like this before. They want food companies and food industries to be activists, advocates, fighting on behalf of social change and consumer rights. Perhaps social media is cutting out the middleman, much the way Orbitz or Travelocity cut out the travel agent. Now consumers can today go direct to food manufacturers in food companies and get heard and get action. Very unique times, very unique future for our food industry. And we see consistently around the world that well-being and wellness continues to be incredibly important, with 73% of those responding saying they expect foods to help them in fighting diseases, helping their families to be more healthy, to be an active agent in reducing health risk. They want food companies to use their resources to change the world, starting with the products they make. And certainly the talks earlier this morning about genomics indicate that that's so possible with potatoes. Possibly there are also consumers who are tired of broken healthcare systems, popping pills, and concerns about aging and quality of life. Food can truly be an ally in the future. And we all know that with social media and the internet, we're learning a lot more about food than we've ever learned before. In fact, possibly the more we know, the more skeptical, the more concerned we're becoming. It seems that not only do we want to recognize the ingredients in our food, by the way, a very simple food like potatoes is extraordinarily appealing, but we want to know the backstory behind the companies, the people, all of the different stakeholders in the food channel. The curtain has lifted on the food supply chain, and all engaged are under a microscope. The question is, how and when will they begin to learn about your supply chain? What will they discover? What will they think? Will they be pleased? Will they understand it? Quite candidly, the people in the meat supply chain really didn't have any expectation that consumers would care much about deboning meat and taking fat and separating it from meat. Suddenly, pink slime became a headline and was instantly pulled from the system, a process that had been used for decades, that had been verified as safe. We know that when consumers are exposed to piecemeal information about these different processes out of context, it tends to concern them, frighten them, and even in some cases set off a firestorm. Never before have B2B suppliers, including French fry manufacturing companies, had to anticipate this type of environment. And where our food-related issues are most noticeable, certainly most dire, is at home. We are truly recognizing that we are ready to pay more to do good by purchasing food at a premium. We all know that global issues exist, but when we can see them and feel them at home, we're motivated to act. Human needs worldwide rank higher in priority and concern than planetary needs. And as you can see in this big word chart here, we're very aware of very real and threatening issues: hunger, malnutrition, lack of water. The concerns they have, that consumers have, are reaching global recognition and proportion. And there are a large number of consumers in every one of these countries who are indicating they're willing to pay money for their food, more for their food, if we can help to rectify these issues. Now, before you all jump out of your seats, particularly those who are in research and say, yeah, we hear that all the time, consumers say one thing and do another thing, I'm going to ask you to suspend belief or disbelief at this moment. The reason is, we believe that what consumers have been saying, and they've been saying this for a very long time, is growing in volume and proportion. They mean it. They really do want to do something that's good for their fellow man, and they want to use their food supply and their food purchases as a way to do that. We believe that if our concerns and our intents grow louder and deeper over time, eventually our behavior will follow. Perhaps the year 2020 may be the year of social change through food. We also see in this research that consumers have a deep love affair with the farmer around the world, and they fantasize that we will return to bucolic farming roots. If only we could show more potato farmers with pitchforks standing in a row of blossoming plants behind them to ease consumer anxiety. But we all know that farming has become a dirty word in many parts of our world. The practices that we use are foreign to some, scary to others, misunderstood by many, and roundly rejected, often without fair trial. You have an opportunity to reinforce consumer value and trust in the products that you make and sell by simply highlighting the positive, sustainable practices of potato farming and helping the public to learn more. And we're just beginning to see that restaurant chains can no longer conveniently hide behind their menus, unwilling, unable, uninterested, or uncaring about the consumer's need for health and wellness, because they are being forced now by laws and regulations to pay attention. And food manufacturers are recognizing that they have a role and responsibility that does not stop at the transaction between selling their food to the food service operators. They have an opportunity and a responsibility to elevate how that food is used, how it's presented, and assist that operator in communicating about the food and the products that they supply. So what are our expectations for the year 2020? I assembled many of my colleagues around the world to look at the data and put our thinking caps on. We did some predicting. Because our firm has been specializing in food for so many years, it was an interesting way of taking what we've known for decades and looking ahead for a few more decades. Some of these predictions you may find totally outlandish. I accept that. Others, you may not. I would ask you to think big and ask yourself, if this is not possible, why isn't it? What is? And what else could we be thinking about when it comes to innovating in our food supply? So the first prediction is, I believe that food being good is not good enough, and that the current corporate CSR, philanthropy, and sustainability programs will be viewed as thinly veiled attempts to whitewash issues with public displays of spending. The new expectation is that individual brands corporations, businesses will be expected to collectively demonstrate a commitment and a measurable impact on society and community. Where once a corporate annual report or CSR report would have boasted about spending millions of dollars on a particular issue, the new paradigm will be to require companies and individual brands to commit to working on an issue or a range of issues over time, setting quantifiable goals, reporting against those goals in alone or in partnership with third-party organizations, and reporting out their progress year by year. Another prediction is that micro-investing will allow us to sow the seeds of change with our food purchases. As I said earlier, consumers have long said that they would pay more to do good, and they have not simply had an easy, reasonable, simple mechanism to empower them to direct philanthropic spending. Surely our technologies exist or are in the pipeline that will make this obstacle a thing of the past. Using technology, imagine that every consumer is able to personally identify how the percentage of profits a company takes from every one of his or her transactions is used on a philanthropic or social good. Envision consumers creating a profile that's shared with food companies and their own bank. The bank directing a micro percentage of each transaction to a social or philanthropical organization of choice. The consumer directs the dollars to the places and the people she or he wants to support. We have all heard about the triple bottom line. It's been discussed for many, many years. It's not out of fashion, but it simply needs to have some teeth. We don't have a way of actually creating some standards against triple bottom line. We have GAAP standards, generally accepted accounting principles. We have GAS standards, which are government auditing standards, used routinely to measure the financial health of companies. I believe that there will be a true balance sheet for publicly held companies that will use a set of metrics called the triple bottom line. Those bottom line standards will be identified as a common set of standards, aspirational, that set metrics in accordance with consumer, stakeholder, influencer, government, and NGO expectations, and that the actions and the behaviors of that company and the decisions it makes will be used as a way in which we can judge whether there is consistent and continuous improvement in the eyes of our consumers and our customers in that company's future. We all hear about transparency, but transparency has really no definition. It's in the mind or the eyes of the beholder. I believe that what will arise is it will no longer be lip service, and that public and private partnerships will push for a definition, and that behaviors that demonstrate accountability to expectations will begin to restore trust in our total global food supply. Imagine that this is a prime opportunity for industry leadership to form a coalition around a single set of transparency guidelines that are framed with both public and private partnerships involved. This is a huge opportunity for leadership going forward and for innovation as well. And speaking of innovation, many of you work with companies that have R&D centers, and I do see already the growth of virtual R&D centers where consumers are actually involved from the very beginning, from concept phase all the way to production phase in the R&D processes of companies. This is much more than a survey or a consumer focus group. This is actually inviting mass consumers in to take part in designing products, designing foods, designing how those foods will be delivered. And for those of you who may be skeptical, if you know much about the company called General Mills, they've been doing this for the last 5 years with enormous success. In the food service sector, I believe we will see something we call a see-through menu. You heard in workshops yesterday about QR coding. QR coding allows menu items allows the operator to give the consumer an ability to swipe that menu and be able to access deeper, more intimate and detailed knowledge about the food, how it was manufactured, where it came from, at an instant. By placing those codes in web-based menus, consumers can continually preview menus and make informed choices in advance. And food service customization or personalization will continue to evolve. The biggest issue facing the food industry is in the food service sector, where labeling and nutrition and sourcing information are nothing more than policy band-aids, area to area, country to country. A true revolution lies around the corner for the food company or the organization that can help operators create personalized menus for patrons. Patrons of the future will be able to go online, put in their reservation online, whether it's opentable.com or whatever your favorite app is, create a dining preference profile, and submit it to their favorite restaurateur and chef. Chef now knows that I'm going into the restaurant in 3 weeks with my husband, and I happen to prefer gluten-free, hormone-free, and low-fat. So chef can now modify his menu slightly so that I have something I can choose. I'm now a loyal patron for life because I know that chef cares about me. And I believe there will be a food and ag trust bank formed. Right now, the food and ag research pipeline is terribly empty. What little funds that exist are generated by self-interest groups and with agendas. Policies and regulations are being constructed on misinformation and disinformation. What is sorely needed is a centralized global fund that will stimulate a whole new body of unbiased science to ensure a balanced public debate. These funds must be protected and matched by government to help directed research projects that inform and shape policy. And lastly, I believe there will be a food values index. The food values index will actually, in some ways, surpass branding, where consumers will buy products and foods on customized food ranking systems, systems that identify the values that are most important to each consumer. It will be based on a number of priorities, whether it's safety, sustainability, taste, health, price, etc. But these different values will allow consumers to create a customized shopping list of the foods that they believe meet or match or mirror who they are. Because in this research, what we have clearly seen, that values matter as much as value when you're innovating. Thank you very much.